Good evening, everyone. My name is Edgars Peics, and I'm here tonight in a capacity of a CTO for the Printify. And this is Printify Tech Talks that are proudly brought to you by Printify, a Silicon Valley tech startup operating from Riga, Latvia. I have 3 tasks for tonight. So introduce myself and Printify Tech Talks. Second task is to interview Andrew Lee. And the third one is to moderate Q&A session for Andrew. And actually, this is how we achieve this time tonight. The goal, most likely, is going to take 1 hour for the interview, and then half an hour up to half an hour for the Q&A session. So I will start with my first task, and then quickly go through to the main guest for tonight, for Andrew. Since I remember myself, I'm an engineer who loves to invent things and find engineering solutions to every challenges in a life. I met something that resembles the computational device when I was 10 years old. That wasn't a PC, absolutely far from it. And this is like 35 years ago. And I actually almost instantly, I fall in love with the programming, because there were no games on the device. You couldn't actually get anything to be apart so the device itself couldn't do much, just calculate something and back and forth something, basics things. And there was not much interest in the school for those devices. So in early days, those parents and friends were attempting to convince that computers is not for me. This is geeky, a little crazy, a little bit not something for the normal people would choose, and definitely not long term. And they even convinced me to study something else than computer technology. And obviously I graduated, I have all the different degrees and higher educations, and none of them in computer technology. But all my life, every single dollar or euro I have earned in my life was coming from the computer industry. It was a love from first sight at the age of 10, and then it has been with me since up to today. And I have worked in IT industry now for 25 years, and I have worked almost in all possible roles that are out there. And I can tell you horror stories and interesting situations in everything through it, starting from programming, system administration, help desk, project management, and lately I have found myself my strengths working in a CTO capacity. For last 10 years, I have been CTO and CIOs for different companies, and I like it. I love it, and I'm good at it. Unless I find something more useful, I am exactly where I need to be in this life. So that's why we're here, and I am today proudly going to be interviewing as well the Andrew for this. One of the actually promises when I was summoned here to the Printify by the founder, James Tamplin, was that I will have ability to interact with the brightest minds of Silicon Valley. I was just picturing this, we are flying over to San Francisco, we have a Bayside restaurant, we're discussing it, attending different companies that they have invested in, and we're talking and finding these good things that I could learn from and become better. Apparently, all those smart Silicon Valley brightest minds are extremely busy people. You send them something more than 1 paragraph and they reply with 1 word or 2 words, maximum a sentence. And they are asking, be more precise, ask exactly what you want, so that they could actually either forward it to somewhere or actually answer with yes or no kind of thingy. This is definitely not the, the dream I had for this kind of part, but I still enjoy it because the guys are very good, and I'm very happy because they really have much of the experience to learn from. I'm not only all success and 10 out of 10 guy, so I have as well my own attempts to do the startups. I have failed several times. I always kind of think that the reasons for failures are actually, I didn't have this sales co-founder that would, sell all of the great stuff that technically I did. But in reality, I realized the ideas were not so great and the timing was not right, and etc. But this is where the tech talks are about. So Printify is the startup, 5 years in the industry. The investors and the angel investors are as well investing in a lot of companies. And I think we will be focusing on this today, more technical and entrepreneuring aspect of this synthesis that makes and pushes the world to forward. So Printify Tech Talks are coming in, and they are talks for the place for developers, engineers, marketing, and product people to learn from industry experts that Printify brings in from Silicon Valley and other parts of the world. We feature company founders, tech experts, investors, and industry thought leaders to cover topics in product management, engineering, for the product-driven companies. And we, as a Printify, we are a technology platform that automates print-on-demand services for e-commerce. We are named 24th fastest growing American-based company in the #1 startup and the #1 startup in Latvia. Printify is backed by incredibly experienced Silicon Valley angel investors, and one of them is Andrew Lee, that I'm proud to present you today. And Andrew is double major in computer science and electrical engineering, co-founder of Firebase, that was sold to Google in 2014. And in 2018, Firebase was ranked by Stack Overflow as a platform used already by 15% of world's developers. So this is amazing. He's investor in 40 plus companies, technologist, philanthropist, and all this thanks to idea that you built together with a co-founder, this API that enables the integration of online chat functionality into their websites. So honestly, this sounds like too good to be true, and we are happy to listen, Andrew, to your story. Welcome, Andrew Lee, to Printify Tech Talks. Help to inspire local engineering community.
Thank you. Good afternoon/good morning.
So, Andrew, where are you talking to from? Where are you right now?
I am sitting in my apartment in San Francisco, California, and it is early 7 a.m.
Amazing. Did you have your coffee already?
Not yet. I'll have that after the talk.
Okay. Andrew, can you tell us a little bit, how do you typically introduce yourself? You have been through a lot of pitches, very likely. Yeah.
Usually these days I talk about Firebase, and it's gotten a lot easier over time, because when we started Firebase, it was just 3 of us. It was me and my co-founder, our first employee, and we were pivoting from another product. And when I would tell people what we were working on, they never heard of us. They never heard, for the first few years, they never heard of Firebase. And today, like you mentioned, 15% or something of the world's developers use it, and even more people know about it. So pretty much anywhere in the world I go, I say Firebase, and if I'm talking to a developer, they know what it is. So the introductions have gotten a lot easier these days. So I introduced myself as one of the founders of Firebase, and I'm no longer there. I left Google in 2017, but I'm still a startup founder. I have a new startup I'm working on that's still in stealth mode, and then I'm also an angel investor in Printify, obviously, and then a number of other companies.
Really curious what we should do as a Printify so that you would be proud as well, being introduced you as a business card. So I'm the angel investor in Printify. So that would be awesome to achieve. So I don't know, do you have?
I think you're already doing great, right? I get the updates regularly, and a lot of people are using it. Things look pretty good for the business, so I think keep doing what you're doing, and I'm already very proud.
Thank you, Andrew. Okay, so let's focus on your current business card, so that the ones that you are actually very well known in the world for. So the Firebase itself. It was very interesting. I watched some old video. It was maybe 2013 or something on Vimeo, and you were pitching the Firebase actually to the investors / the PR people or marketing people. And it was really like you were like 1 hour trying to understand, draw them something, what is the Firebase? And they were like not getting this. And there was like really back and forth, asking the question. I was like, Andrew, how do you explain in a couple of sentences what is the Firebase?
So I think I know the video you're talking about. I was actually explaining it to a group of European press that had come over, and they were doing a tour of Silicon Valley, and they just wanted to meet some startups. And I don't think they were technical at all, which made that conversation really difficult because obviously it's a developer product. Well, I can tell you what Firebase was at the time. At the time, Firebase was just one product. It was a database product. And the reason I specify that is because today there's like 18 Firebase products. So you have database and authentication and analytics and push notifications and all kinds of stuff, testing and performance monitoring. But at the time, it was just a database product. And the basic idea that we had was that the way people should build their web and mobile apps was to put your logic on the client. You actually, you run it as an app. You have all the client logic on the device. That device connects to our cloud and uses a WebSocket to push and pull data back and forth. And you let us do the work. You let us figure out what data to send you, when to send it to you, and we push stuff down to you. And that allowed you to build an app without having to build the traditional like back end and front end that you might for a web app, or the back end and the front end you might for a mobile app. All you had to do was you drop our Firebase SDK into your app, and you set up some security rules so you can control access, and then you write your client, and that lets you build a full app.
I think this was exactly why the not tech people couldn't understand it. It was like, SDK, okay, sockets, okay, so database, okay, they most likely thought about Oracle type or Microsoft type of thingy, but definitely you had way beyond it already by that time.
It was a challenge for sure, and I don't think they ever really got it.
Andrew, can you tell me a little bit, like, how did you get there? I mean, typically, you were like 3 founders, yeah, or 3 guys at the beginning.
It was 2 founders, and it's a long story. So I left my previous job in 2007, and that's when I started the startup journey. And for the first 3.5 years or so, it was just me and my co-founder in a little apartment. And at one point, actually, we didn't have enough money to pay for rent, so we lived with his parents, and then we lived with my aunt because we couldn't afford any rent. It was just the 2 of us. And we went through several different iterations of ideas. The first idea we had was sort of like an online video chat marketplace. You could like meet experts and learn from them. That didn't work. We tried a mobile payments device that didn't work out. We tried a lost and found tracking service that didn't work out. And eventually we built this chat service called Involve. And the idea with Involve was, this was back when Facebook's chat bar on its website was a new thing, and people were really excited about the idea of having a real-time collaborative experience in a website. And we said, hey, it's actually possible for us to build this as a third-party add-in you can add to any website. And so we built a kind of a plugin that you could put into your WordPress, or you could put into your own personal website to allow you to different people to communicate with each other when they're on a website. And this was actually pretty popular on things like online forums. The biggest customers for us were all like A-list musicians. So we had like Ricky Martin and One Direction and a bunch of these bands using us. So the fan sites for the bands, so the fans would talk with each other and they talk with the celebrity on the site. And we built this up, and it actually was doing okay as a business. We made enough money that like we actually paid ourselves a little tiny bit, but it wasn't really taking over the world. And we went and talked to some of these customers and we said, hey, what do you like about our product? Why are you using it? And every one of them said, well, we don't like it. We would rather build something else that's much better, but we don't have time because we have all this other stuff we have to do, and we have a very small engineering team. And so it's good enough for now, and we'll replace it later. And we said, well, that's not good. What could we do to make you actually like it? And they said, well, just take your whole front end and throw it away. It's crap. We don't like it. And instead, give us access to your APIs, and we'll build something that we do like on top of it. Because they had time. They had, usually they had front end folks, they had designers, but they didn't have the folks that could build the back end distributed systems. And so that's what we did. We went off, and the first thing we actually did is we wrote documentation for what the API would look like. We'd spent so much time building things that people didn't want to use. We said, okay, well, what if we just go off and we write the documentation first, we show it to you and say, hey, if you have this documentation, would you use it? And they said yes. And then we said, okay, well, we're going to prototype the thing, and we're going to show it to you. And we sat people down in front of computers and said, build the thing you want to build. And we videotaped them actually seeing if they could build it, and they were able to build it. And after doing this a few times, we're like, we're onto something. So we actually built it. I think the moment that we knew that it was going to work was when we were at a stage where the API worked, but we hadn't yet written the part that actually persisted it to disk on the server. It was all in memory. So every time you restarted the server, everything went away. We had a tester who we were very explicit with. We said, hey, this is not going to save any of your data. It's not a real database. It's just a thing to test our API out. Please do not do anything important with this. And she said, yeah, I understand. And she went off, and she was a founder of a company, and they launched on TechCrunch using us as their backend and storing all of the data. And we saw the article in TechCrunch, and we called her up and said, hey, you're not really storing all your data in us, are you? I really hope not, because we can't save any of this. And she said, oh yeah, we used it. I thought you were just, telling me for legal reasons or something. I didn't know you actually were storing it. And we're like, oh crap. Okay. So we wrote a script that actually pulled out all of her data from our APIs. We really quickly built a backend. We redeployed the system, and we put all our data back into the API. And we didn't lose anything. And she was off and running. But I think that was the moment we realized that there was such demand for what we were doing that people were willing to do really insane things to be able to use it. And I think the rest after that point was a better know and a much smoother sailing. But that's kind of how we arrived at the idea.
But unbelievable. I mean, I could just, in this short story, you are prototyping the ideas, receiving feedback that actually you're producing crap, but actually you found a niche where you would actually found the product and were able to monetize it and even get paid, and started to see how the people are picking it up in a very strange ways. Like a dream startup, exactly like.
People ask me, how to come up with startup ideas, and my advice is usually to start working on something somewhere that they find interesting, because all the really obvious ideas have been taken. People are doing them, but once you start working in chat toolbar land for a couple of years, you start to find things out. You start to realize that actually there's a bunch of people that want this thing, and you can start to figure out, actually, I've talked to this customer and this customer and this customer, and they all want the same thing. We should build that. And so I think the best path if you want to do a company is start working in an area you are excited about, you're interested in, and see what sort of things people start asking for, and eventually you're going to find something that about that no one else knows about. In 2011. The idea of serverless or back end of the service, these didn't exist at all. They seemed totally crazy. And I think today it's hard to understand that. Today, this is a very normal thing. Lots of people do this, but this was absolutely not a thing then. And so I would tell people that, instead of writing a back end, you're just going to call our APIs. And they're like, yeah, right, that's going to work. How's security going to work, right? But it does.
Unbelievable. Andrew, can we just rewind a little bit back from the moment when you had everything in memory, and then you were realizing that you are actually storing some startup critical data in the RAM, and basically you needed to persist it. You were very quickly, oh yeah, we just pulled it out from APIs and saved it. But come on, you somewhere arrived at this concept of the database, somewhere the concept of the persistence, just to scale it. Can you just elaborate a little bit? How did you do that? Because you were everything was already on real time.
So you're asking what was the evolution of the actual persistence layer for us?
Exactly.
So the actual first implementation of it was Redis. And we chose Redis because it's really easy to use and it's super fast. And there was a bug actually in our initial code. I wrote all of that and the first version of it. And there was a bug in our initial code where anytime any piece of data changed, we actually read the entire database into memory and wrote the entire database back out. And Redis was fast enough that we didn't notice for the first week that this was going on. Eventually figured out that this was not gonna scale. And we kept that for a while. Redis needs one memory though. And it's really not designed as a long-term persistent store. You can use it that way, but it's really not designed to do that. And so we switched to Mongo a little while later, and the things that we liked about Redis and Mongo were really, we were trying to build all the interesting database functionality sort of on top of it. So we really needed something that like wrote things to disk efficiently and that could replicate across replicas for reliability purposes. But all the querying functionality, for example, we were using our own. So we were doing like very simple operations. And so what we really wanted with Mongo was like the replication and the fact that it was like very low latency to do some of these simple operations to disk. And it was MongoDB then for a very long time. There were various evolutions of that, right? Because they had their original persistence layer, and then they had this thing called Wired Tiger, and they had like all kinds of upgrades, and we changed the way we were chunking data. Like the original way it worked is every single value, if you had a JSON tree with 100, Booleans and ints and strings and things, every single one of those was its own document. That was the original version, which actually worked for a while. We eventually figured out we had to chunk it. So we had this algorithm to figure out what portion of the tree we carve up into documents and how we store those. Today, it's a totally different system. To be honest, I couldn't tell you exactly how it works. It's been rebuilt so many times, including after I left. So it no longer uses MongoDB. It has its own thing built by the folks at Google now. But that was kind of how it started.
Okay, so actually there was let's say, shelf products that were used behind the scenes in order to achieve your goals at the early stages. And then at some moment, there was as well the limitation of the technological scalability, most likely, and then you went or Google together went more crazier than that. That's how I understand it.
It was a constant fight to keep that service up. And I would say Mongo is not the first problem that we had. So and this is the advice I give to any startup is build the thing the customer wants, not the thing you think you can scale. And it's very tempting to say, well, if we change this requirement in this way, it makes it way easier to scale the product. And so you got to ask yourself, well, is that requirement important? Do customers want that? And there were certain attributes that our customers really like. So one of them was the really low latency real-time sync. Like people love it, and it's actually really hard to do. Another thing they like is the fact that it's a hierarchical data structure. So for example, when you do a hierarchical operation like a delete, it atomically deletes the entire tree, which people love. It's really slick. It's also super hard to scale. They love the flexibility of security rules. It's also super hard to scale. So we basically said, what are all the things you want? We pack those all with the product, and then later we're like, okay, well, how the hell do we scale this thing? And in retrospect, I might have made it. There might have been a couple places where I would have changed the requirements a bit to make it a little easier to do, but generally we tried to stick to our guns of this is what the customers want, and we're going to find a way to make it work. And I think we were largely able to do that, but it was a struggle the whole time. So the service for the first 6 months, I think, was one server. We hadn't yet figured out a way to shard it across multiple servers. And so we just got progressively bigger and bigger one servers. We also didn't have a way to do any sort of like rolling deploy. And so we'd have scheduled downtime, which today is a thing that you don't even think about, but we used to have like a time when we do the deploy every week, shut the thing down. And it took like 20 minutes to come back up because everyone had to reconnect. And then even after we sharded across servers, we then had to deal with the fact that there was one Mongo database, and the Mongo database could shard, but there was one database. There's limitations on what we can do with one Mongo database. So eventually we moved to the point where we could shard the database, and then we moved to the point where we could have multiple databases. But then we were still in one region. And actually, as a part of the story of scaling, just like a couple of weeks ago, they launched, or maybe it was 1 week ago, very, very recently, they finally launched a European region for our GDB. So it was one server, right? And then it was one database, and then it was still one data center, and now it's finally like multiple continents, which is pretty cool.
Andrew, this reminds me, I have been in a situation where I need to restart the core. I restart the core, and there's, I don't know, maybe 50,000 people trying to pull from the socket something from me. and the system couldn't start because basically the load is such a huge because all the reconnects everything else. So the Java on behind the scenes is kind of like, it's actually not possible. So we had to throw everybody out, put the firewall in place, put up the machine, and then slowly open up by regions, by IP ranges to kind of the access to the server. And I'm just thinking, most likely you definitely had similar stuff.
Oh yeah. We learned the hard way. We actually, at one point early on, we had to change the DNS name for our API because we just couldn't bring it up again. And we learned there's a few tricks you can do here. So one of them, you need to address the case of kill switch. And so we learned that there needs to be especially if you change versions and it turned out like the old version doesn't work with the new version of the API in some way you didn't expect, and it just keeps retrying, that can be a disaster. And so we built a kill switch so we could tell the SDKs stop trying. And that would be until like a user refreshes the page or they open the app or something again, which would at least buy us some time. We also moved all of the SSL negotiation off into a separate tier. And so the service now is like many tiers, right? There's a front end load balancer, and then there's like an SSL negotiation tier, and then there's multiple sort of layers. And we put like a whole bunch of BP CPUs at the top just to handle SSL negotiations. If you think about it, if you have millions of concurrent connections all coming, like restart the server, they're all coming right now, and they all need to negotiate. We were using very strong certificates because we're security conscious. So you have to do 5 million SSL negotiations right away. That can take a while. And so you want to have a separate tier that can handle that for you.
Andrew, amazing. Okay, so we can definitely discuss it because we definitely share the similar. Apparently problems on this side of the ocean are similar problems that you are having. So could be that we are working in the same industry, but very nice. Andrew, there's one thing I'm just curious. Scale is awesome, but scaling with little engineering to the mega reach that you reached is unbelievable. So at 2013, you still had 7 engineers, and you had already 20,000 developers using your system and developing SDKs, incorporating in the applications. And you had 20 million per day sessions, unique sessions? How? 7 people
like that, yeah.
Have the cloud by that time. How is that possible? It feels like it's engineering paradise there.
Yeah, so for anyone who's listening who's on call, I was on call just myself 24/7 for 2 years, and it would alert every night that entire time. You should ask my wife how she feels about that. But it was hard. It was real hard, and we also didn't really know what we were doing. We had one guy on the team with real operational experience for a service like this. And the rest of us, we knew computer science, but we never really operated a service like this. And we were learning as we went. And we figured things out. We did have downtime. And I think one of the things you learn doing this is if your product is needed enough, people will deal with it. Every time we go down for, we'd have an hour of downtime. People would think, okay, well, that's it. All the customers are going to go away. But we almost never lost anyone. As long as we, sent out the postmortem and we told them why things went wrong, what we're going to do to fix it, and as long as it seemed like we're moving in the right direction, the customers would, they weren't happy, but they would forgive us and we'd move forward. So it was a struggle.
Andrew, 2 years being on the call 24/7. Are you still married to the same woman?
Well, we weren't married at the time, but we are now. Yeah, so it worked out.
Okay, good. That's very, very solid choice. And the tolerance level is very good. Andrew, I wanted to ask you, let's say, I have been around for some time and I have had this opportunity in other companies, in other setups to do as well due diligence of other companies, because I had a previous CEO crazy enough to wanting to grow by acquiring companies. Thank you for him. I learned amazing lot of things about new companies, because you go in, everybody does things differently, specific ways and very interesting, approaches and methods, and the same problem is solved 15 other ways. I want to understand how Google did due diligence on you. how was it? Like you're coming, I mean, 7 people team and then incorporated in something like that. How actually that process went through?
Well, so at the time we sold, there were 24 of us. So we were a little larger. And the goals of the acquisition, so Google bought us, partly for the technology, partly for the users, but a big portion of the goals of the technology was we turned out to be really good at developer marketing. So we, the way I describe it to people is Google came along and said, hey, your infrastructure is crap. We got better infrastructure, but boy, do you have a lot of users. We want some of those users on our cloud platform. So a big part of what we did was helping Google figure out how to develop marketing for cloud, and that was a lot of stuff that my co-founder did, a lot of stuff that our what we call developer evangelists did for us. So I won't go into that, but that was like a very important part of it. And then the other big part was our product and our customers, and that was the integration itself was a multi-year process. Some of the systems that we had when we came in got rewritten. So like the authentication product that we have, I don't think there's a single line of code left. It's a totally new thing. The hosting service, I think, is a totally new thing at this point. Some of it is still the same code base. So the real-time database is still the same code base. I'm sure every line of code there has been changed over time, but it's still, an evolution of what we had when we came in. And I don't know if I could give some insight here. I think one of the things we learned is that everyone has the same problems everywhere, like you said before. We came into Google thinking all of our infrastructure problems, they're going to tell us how to fix. They're going to show up and they're going to be like this, and like it's going to scale and it's going to be fast. And the reality is they didn't know how to do it either, right? They were trying to figure this stuff out too. And so I think we helped them at least as much as they helped us in many respects. And people don't buy companies because they know exactly how to do things. They buy companies because they want to learn, because they want help in different areas. And so we definitely learned through that. I learned a ton. I learned a ton. Like Google has some really, really amazing internal infrastructure. So like just the physical data centers that they have are totally insane. And then the technology. So things like Spanner are super cool. So there's a new database. Well, I shouldn't say new. It's many years old now. But Cloud Firestore, which is the sort of like super scaling RTDB version that we built with Google, is backed by Spanner. And this is something we never could have done by ourselves. Like there's nothing like it outside of Google, and it's this like globally consistent SQL database thing that's like super cool. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
No, I'm happy. So I mean, I was told once as well, like one of my CEOs before that told me, though there's a trick. Let's go to these guys, let's pick a competitor or something, and let's go in and tell them we want to buy them. And this is an awesome reason to allow them to tell their secrets, how they are actually, building and what their competitive advantages. So I relate to what you said about the Google coming and joining you and actually learning from you, and you are learning from them. So this is a synergy, definitely, that keeps us going. So it keeps us innovating more. So absolutely. Andrew, I mean, is there any new tech out there that you are really like fascinated about, that you're still impressed, that you're like, this is interesting, so that you haven't already tapped in?
There's lots of stuff that like I think is kind of cool. Like the stuff in the news right now about deepfold. I don't know if you've been following this, but there's a team at DeepMind that figured out how to do protein folding. That's like very cool. So a lot of stuff with machine learning and the types of applications that come up with machine learning, deepfakes and whatnot is like very, very cool. We use some technologies that my team really likes. So we use Kotlin. On the back end, that's the funny thing. Everyone uses it on Android, but we actually use it on the back end. We use React. I learned my React myself recently. That was fun. But I don't know, that like this stuff, if people ask me like, what's the coolest tech out there? A lot of the stuff that's the coolest tech to me is the old stuff, the stuff that's like really been polished. So things like the JVM. The JVM is awesome. It's like it's many years, many people working on this thing to make it like just a reliable, scalable, just like workhorse. V8 is also super awesome. So the runtime for JavaScript that you have in Chrome. LevelDB is one of these gems that's just like been around forever, and it powers a lot of stuff, and it's like super fast. Some of the Google tech that they have in cloud platforms, like BigQuery. You haven't used BigQuery. Like obviously I'm biased because I worked at cloud, but like BigQuery is really cool. Spanner is really cool. So yeah, I don't have like a shiny that I can point you at, but lots of cool tech out there.
Andrew, I just wanted to ask almost off topic. I mean, you mentioned about the AI, machine learning, and it's very close to the AI thingy as such. Which part are you in? Are you in a group that advocates against it, or are you the ones who advocate for it? So where are you?
For machine learning, you're saying? I think it's a little overblown. Like I think artificial intelligence is a cool sounding name for a thing that's not actually that crazy. The basic idea is it's a sophisticated pattern matching method, and you can train it on data sets, and you can see if things match those data sets, and it can be applied to some useful things. But I don't think the existing products or projects are going to turn into like Terminator style robots roaming the streets. So I know I'm not an alarmist. I also don't think it's going to solve all our problems. So like at my current startup, we joke about applying AI in places sometimes, but the vast majority of the types of things we're building are things that, much simpler approaches will probably work much better. And I tell the same to my investments for the most part of like, don't go looking for places to plug AI in, right? Like it's a niche tool for very specific types of problems, and like most of the time an if statement's going to do a better job for you.
Andrew, I'm with you on the same page. I haven't seen yet any evidence that some kind of artificial intelligence would start writing a software code, actually. I haven't seen that yet. So that's why it feels like it's a little bit too far out for us to get worried yet. So, but anyway, I wanted just to ask you, like, we have learned that you are coding. You just recently learned React on your own. I mean, what are you best at nowadays? If you need to summarize yourself.
I would say technically I am a manager now. So I actually do write code in my startup. Not a lot. It's to contribute here and there, and largely to just understand how things are working and what the constraints on our system are. As far as what I'm best at, I think I'm a founder in the sort of more general sense of the word. So I'm good at getting a group of people excited about an idea. I'm good at defining a vision for that thing, and pitching that vision. And I think I'm good at maintaining like a clear focus on customers and a clear focus on the priorities that we need to serve them. So this is actually something I got really good at through several iterations of figuring out how to launch a new product to customers, because Firebase has like 18 of these things. There are many times we launch new things, and I learned the process by which you get customers involved early, you show them what you're building, you get their feedback, you modify things, you iterate, you try again, and that whole process of iterating with those customers up until the launch and then supporting them after the launch, I think is a key skill set. So yeah, many things, but no particular technical strength I can really point you to anymore, other than hiring people that are better than me and having them do it. So
people pitching the idea, leader kind of getting this idea to influence others. So that's what I heard, what you said. Okay.
Yeah, and then the piece about customers, like finding a way to bring products to market that includes the customers and includes our team with the customers. Like every time we have these offsites every 7 weeks. So every 7 weeks, we can't do it in person right now because of COVID, but we do it virtually. And so we'll bring a group of customers to the offsite to do a panel. we'll have our team, I'll have them individually onboard people. We'll capture video clips of these people of how they're using the product. We use our product actually as a way of interacting with our customers and getting feedback on the product. So there's a lot that I do to like help bring customers into the process and make sure that we're building the right thing.
Andrew, now we have like approximately 15-20 minutes for the interview, and I want to now shift the discussion towards like, how on earth engineer becomes to become investor? How is that happening? Tell me honestly. I mean, what is so much interesting in investing and letting somebody else run versus you yourself solving the technical problems like yourself? How?
Well, I want to know I do both. So I have my day job, and I tried after I left Google. I tried to do just the investing thing, and I found for the exact reason that you call out it. Investing is a very shallow involvement. You see the updates, you give advice from time to time. You occasionally visit and you deep dive with some engineers or something. But like for the most, it's not like being on the team, right? It's not like being in the trenches every day with people like figuring out the hard problems. It's a much higher level thing. And so I am doing that again to some extent. But the really cool thing about investing is you get to dabble in a lot of things, and especially you get to dabble in things that you're otherwise completely unqualified to have any opinions in. And so, I mean, you guys are a great example. Right? I know very little about the printing industry. And so in this case, I get to learn through seeing what you guys do, like how this works and what works. And it's fun to have some experts that, I can call up and be like, all right, I got this question about like how the printing industry works. Let's talk. And I have investments in all kinds of crazy stuff. Everything. I have some like kind of very standard like enterprise SaaS investments, but I also have an investment in a lithium mining company. I have an investment in a Haitian power company. I have an investment in an electric car company, in an electric motor manufacturer, a whole bunch of like just off the wall stuff. And every one of those is, the math I do is not necessarily just what's the return on this. A big part of it is like, is this cool and do I want to get the updates? Actually, in fact, one of my best investments so far was a self-driving truck company that the only reason I invested was like, I really want to get their updates. Like, I don't know if this is going to work. This is like really out there, but like these guys seem really smart and I want to get their updates. And so I put some money in them and it turned out to be a good investment too. My cat has decided to join us. I'm gonna put him down.
Analog cat. Is this a digital cat or analog cat?
It's an analog cat.
Because nowadays you never know, because just change the background, everything else, so there's like just But Andrew, thank you very much. So self-driving trucks, unbelievable. I mean, last time we spoke, you told me this story that I couldn't get out of my head, that once you wrote a blog about all the great ideas where you would wish somebody would have started off and then you would have invested. Obviously, I searched for the blog, I couldn't find it, but then tell me about it. Did you really do that? You gave for free the ideas away. Oh my God.
It's actually not that hard to find. So if you go to startupandrew.com, it's there, you can take a look. So the reason I wrote this is I had been tracking, I have this disease where I can't stop thinking about startup ideas. And so the way I would handle this is by just writing them down. And so I had this list of literally like several hundred things where I was like, someone should build this, someone should build this, someone should build this, someone should build this. And after I left Google, I was looking at this list and being like, man, maybe I should fix some of these. And I was talking with some friends and they're like, yeah, you might be able to fix one of those or two of those. You're not going to fix 200. Why don't you do something with this? Because some of these are good ideas. And so I captured what I felt were the best ideas in there, and I put them in a blog post, and I posted that. And it was very widely read. Like it got on Hacker News toward the top, and there were tens of thousands of people who came by and read this. And I ended up investing in a whole bunch of companies that came out of that. So, and including some really interesting sort of like cold emails. So like I mentioned, I'm an investor in an Indian electric car manufacturer, right? Just total cold email. This guy in India who's like, hey, you should invest in my thing. And I actually got a chance to visit them in person. I was over in Delhi last year. And I got to meet them. They're real people. They're really building cars. It's really cool. So there's maybe a half a dozen investments I made, including some stuff that I never would have found otherwise. So I guess my advice for you would be, if you have a list of like good ideas sitting around somewhere, like share it with the world, right? Don't hold those to yourself. Like maybe it'll inspire somebody else. Maybe it'll connect you with someone else who's interested in the same things. It's go ahead and like make a blog post.
But this is amazing. I'm just listening to you. So you are a technologist. You are a product person. You're actually, it looks like you're as well marketeer. Now it looks like you are investor as well, and investor who trusts as well, their babies to kind of, fly on their own. I mean, how come all of this comes together in one person? I mean, shouldn't there be 5 persons? Or the teams that supports you in all of these directions with the advisors and whatnot? I mean, how do you...
Flattery will get you everywhere. I like what I do. I like working with smart people. I like to learn. So I read a lot of stuff on the internet. I don't know. It's fun. It's fun doing all this stuff. And I think the really valuable stuff comes from a fusion of different areas of expertise. I think if you're, as an engineer, like if you're just know engineering, you can create a lot of value. But if you know engineering and you also have a good product sense, you can do a lot more. If you know engineering and you also know how to manage people, you can do a lot more. If you know engineering and you also know how to do design, you can do a lot more. And so I think having that breadth of skills. I used to be just an engineer. I thought I kind of tacked on some other skills. And if you get a chance to do that, I think you'll find you find yourself to be tremendously more valuable with a variety of skills you can combine in different ways.
Awesome. Andrew, if we are still on engineering, kind of, do you remember at least one engineering joke? Favorite jokes of engineering?
You're putting me on the spot here. I'm trying to think. I don't know, man. It's too early in the morning right now. I don't have any.
No worries. Okay, let me check whether the old jokes are still working as well with you. So the joke is like this. My favorite one. SQL query walks in a bar, goes down to the aisle, to the 2 tables, and says, "I want to join you." Does it work? I don't know.
Yes, it does.
Okay. Sorry. I wanted just to put you a little bit off. Yeah, but good. One more thing, Andrew. Can you tell us about compliments you have received most in your life? Have you received compliments? Most likely you have.
I think I think the biggest compliment is just like people using my stuff. Like going, when I travel and I meet a developer somewhere and they show me what they built and it uses our thing, that feels really good. And there's all kinds of crazy stuff people have used, especially Firebase to build. So, the World Health Organization built all of their like Ebola tracking stuff back in the day on us. There's been a bunch of like election coverage things that got built on us. Here's some terrifying stuff. There's a lot of IoT devices in your house that are backed by Firebase. So I remember talking to this light bulb company. They made like smart light bulbs where if our database service went down, you couldn't turn your lights on and off in your house, which I found like crazy. I don't know if that's the product I would want to buy, but pretty crazy. Yeah, just like all kinds of stuff. So that's probably just like seeing that is probably the best compliment I can get. I don't have anything else that comes to mind.
Very good, actually, very good answer. I mean, I feel there's engineer in you much more than everything else that we listed before. But I mean, because this is the biggest compliment that your product actually is used, it works, and it's being innovated on. At least this is as well my benefit,
for sure.
My compliment. Yeah, absolutely, I concur. Andrew, you're not like 20 years young anymore. So, but imagine you were. What kind of advice you can give to the youngest self at 20 years of age, given the knowledge you have at the moment?
Yeah. I would say, the first thing I would say is like nothing great is I'm alone. And so learn how to work with people, learn how to be a part of a team, learn how to listen. This is something I was really bad at when I was younger. I think a lot of people, if they think they're smart, tend to block out other people they think maybe aren't as smart. And what they learn is that even smart people are wrong a lot. And so even if you're the smartest person in the room, if there's 5 people in the room, maybe you're only right 30% of the time, or something like that. So like, learn to listen, learn to be patient with other people, learn to be part of the team. I think that's one piece. I think another piece is there's tremendous value generated like in a long-term investment, a long-term compounding investment on something over a time period. And so, there's a lot of examples of this, but like startup is a great example, right? Like if you look at, Printify usage, right? Like in any given, month to month, it doesn't seem like the company's taking over the world. But if you zoom out and you're like, let's look at this over several years, and like every month it gets bigger and it gets bigger and it gets bigger and it gets bigger. And then eventually, like every month you're adding more people than you added the first entire year. And you're like, wow, okay, it's really going somewhere. But it's not just true for startups, it's true for careers as well. The long-term investment in your skills, the long-term investment in relationships that you have compounds over time. It's also true for like open source technologies. So, figure out if you're 20, figure out what are the things that you want to invest in the next 10 years. Whether those are skills, whether those are businesses, whether those are people, and do the work and keep it up, and it will pay off over time.
Amazing. So I really heard it. So look at learn how to work in a team, listen, allow people to talk, don't pretend that you are the smartest person in the room, looking at long term. It's so awesome. I would wish I would have this chat as well when I was 20. So
yeah, me too. Also enjoy your hair while you still have it.
Yes, thank you very much. So actually, I look at my dad. I think I will be more successful than you are. So, but
you still got yours. So yeah, enjoy it.
Listen, last time we spoke, I wanted to actually ask you one thing. You definitely had some horror stories in your life. You have seen them. Can you tell me at least 1 or 2 horror stories? You already told some of them that you couldn't get the systems up and running, etc. But maybe something else sparks your mind.
I could start with the year 2020, but we'll talk about engineering. I'll tell you a good one. We had an issue that I think illustrates some nice like specific technical problems. So we had the summer after the acquisition by Google, we were straining to get everything scaled up, and we had a kind of a key person go off on paternity leave over the summer, and we had 2 more junior people that were sort of doing the operations for the service, and they were sort of a whole bunch of combination of errors that caused us to have some downtime. And during the downtime, we were trying to get back up quickly, and we decided to copy our database, backup over to another cluster and spin it up on the other cluster. And so we copied this and brought it back up. And what we hadn't realized was that backup was a few seconds behind. It had not captured the last few write operations. This might not seem like such a big deal. Maybe a few people's clients like dropped a couple of pieces of data or something. Except the data that it dropped was some new IDs for some accounts that were created by our authentication system. And we at the time were using sequential user IDs. Never used sequential user IDs. Because what this meant when we brought the system back up was the next set of users that were created reused those IDs. And so there were some parts of our system that thought the user had these access permissions, and another part of the system thought these users were different people. And so we had, and this was fortunately, it was a very small number, like 3, right? There was like 3 accounts you could this on. But there were people who got access to data they weren't supposed to get access to. And fortunately, we were able to verify who these people were and that they didn't do anything malicious. But it was enough to caused me a significant headache for legal reasons, for customer relations reasons. It was a real difficult time period. And so, my advice to you, and we did a whole force modem. This was, probably the toughest operational period we went through, because the worst thing you could, downtime is bad. Losing data is worse. Leaking data is way worse, right? This is the worst type of incident you can have. So my advice to folks is never use sequential user IDs. If you want to make sure, if you have anything that's a very critical ID, you want to make sure that if you lose a couple, that you'll never have new ones that are reassigned to the same values. So use some sort of GUID or random ID or something. And then also make sure that you invest in the procedures of how to handle certain incidents ahead of time. You should have a document that describes, for this type of downtime, for this type of issue, this is what you do. Make sure your team is never so exhausted that they can't handle operational issues. A big part of the problem here was that we had been worked to the bone. Everyone was super tired. We did this operation. This was in the middle of the night. We did this. Everyone was very tired. We made mistakes. So it's one of these things where error compounded upon error, compounded upon error, compounded upon error, and caused this thing to happen. And so yeah, that's probably the one of the worst. I have another horror story actually to share you, which is a little funnier. This was very early, much earlier, before we had very many users, and we had a new employee start, one of our very early employees, and he was really trying to prove himself. And we were at that point just grinding out any engineer during the company. We gave them full access to prod. They could do anything they wanted, and we trusted them. And so I went home one night, and he was going to stay in the office. He was going to work late into the night to prove himself to us. And I got a call about 2 a.m. and I answered the phone I had been sleeping, and I said, "Hey, what's going on?" And he said, "Hey, Andrew, how's it going?" I'm like, "Fine. It's 2 a.m. Why are you calling me?" He said, "Do we have any backups for the user database?" And I said, "Yes, we do. I'm getting my shoes on. What's going on?" And so I got out, got my shoes on. He was still at the office. I went back over there, and he had. This was back when we used the real-time database internally for everything. We forbid any other database than the real-time database. So our own user account were in the real-time database. And he had 2 browser windows open. One of them had the staging environment, user account database in it. The other one had the prod environment user database. And he was doing a test where he's okay, I'm going to wipe out the user accounts. I'm going to run this test on staging. And he clicked the wrong button. And we didn't have any, there wasn't even a confirmation modal or anything. It was just you click the button, it's okay, I'm gonna delete everything. And so after that, we did all kinds of stuff. We changed the color of the prod console, we had a browser plugin, and anytime you were on prod, it all turned red. We added a bunch of confirmation modals, forget all the stuff. We did a whole bunch of stuff to make that not happen. Fortunately, we had backups. We were able to recover everything, but it was a learning experience.
Andrew, come on, it's alike. I have done all of everything that you just told me as well, myself personally. And I remember first thing, put the production red and something else yellow or something. This is the first thing. And then it looks so ugly that you cannot even type. You just don't look at it, you type on it, so whatever. But I hear you, awesome. Thank you very much. So you are human, you are engineer, you have went through all of this. Andrew, Printify has ranked in high as 15th place in the overall top and in 5th place in a category of technological companies by Financial Times in America's fastest growing companies in 2020. So 15th place overall and 5th in technological company. So we're give me an advice as a CTO for the Printify.
Sure, I have maybe a couple. First piece of advice I have for you is the best team wins. So I think I get a lot of founders coming to me and saying, "Hey Andrew, I'm spending so much time recruiting and coaching my people. I spend all my time trying to build a team, and I never have any time to do product or talk to customers or whatever. And I'm how can I be more efficient in building my team?" And my answer is always don't. Right? You should be spending, if you're a leader of a large organization, you should be spending 50% of your time just on team building. I don't just mean recruiting. I also mean like helping the people on your team build their skills, helping make sure the team is organized, make sure you have the processes, but like your impact is going to be the impact of the people under you and making sure that they are the right people and they're as effective as possible. And if they are happy and they stay, I think that's the biggest thing. I think the second piece of advice I would give you is make sure that you are communicating clear priorities to everyone in the organization. I think where companies, as they get bigger, it becomes harder and harder for each person inside the company to understand how they fit into the broader whole. Like how does their role move the needle for this company that's, used to be just a few people, now it's a lot of people. And I think the really important thing for like a senior leadership, like people leadership position, is to make sure that everyone understands what their little piece is and how that plugs together into the whole, so that they're like, well, hey, if I don't make the IDs non-sequential, then when the SREs make a mistake in the middle of the night and blow away some of our backups, we don't leak data, which would then cause an incident of press, which would cause us to lose our customers, right? And then you go back to engineering and be like, you need to make IDs non-sequential. This is like existential crisis, and they understand. So make the priorities clear and help people understand why they're there and why their job is important. Because everyone you hire, you're paying everyone a bunch of money. They got stock, right? It's expensive. That they're there for a good reason. Make sure they understand why they're there too.
Amazing. You said you had 3 suggestions.
Just the 2.
2. Okay, good. Andrew, amazing. I mean, what should I say? Thank you. Thank you very much for the chat. We have invested 1 hour into this. I would be happily now reading out a couple of questions that we have actually submitted from the crowd. And I encourage everyone who is still listening, the main discussion part is over. Please submit your questions so I can ask them to Andrew. So the top rated question, imagine year 2035. Which technology matters? What should we start learning right now?
That's a great question. Man, in software, that's a long time from now. That's like looking at 2005 and comparing that to today. I would say, I think Webassembly is going to be big. So I would start looking into Webassembly because I think it has the potential to be what Java could have been, right? Java was intended to be the universal runtime. It never quite got there. It had some deficiencies, and Webassembly can make that happen. It's also obviously something that works in browsers, and browsers is very widely supported. So I would look into Webassembly. I think as far as languages go, some of the ones now that are just start becoming hot will probably be like the standards by then. So like things like Kotlin, things like TypeScript will probably be pretty important. Languages tend to live a very long time. Kubernetes is doing well today, but like 15 years is a long time. Who knows if we're still be using that at that point. Machine learning stuff, I'm sure we'll be doing lots of machine learning. Will we be using TensorFlow? I don't know, but it's probably good to understand kind of how some of those things work. So I would look into some of that. It also just depends on kind of what what part of the world you want to look at. If you want to look at like database technologies or cloud technologies, I think, for this company, I'm sure this isn't as much of an issue, but if I was talking to somebody in a much older business, I'd be like, get on the cloud, right? Like it's time. You got to get on the, everything's going to be in the cloud. Everything, like a lot of stuff's going to be hosted services. So I think the era of people managing their own infrastructure is increasingly coming to an end. And so I think in 2035, like the vast majority of people will be using databases that are managed by other people, like the folks at Google and Amazon and Microsoft who do this have a ton of resources. They're really good at it. So most people, I think, will be much better served by those, although this is nothing new, I suppose. Yeah, those are the things that jump to mind.
Very good answers. Andrew, then next question. So this might be very much related to Firebase, right? So what do you think of building data-oriented health tech stack based in Firebase? Data-oriented health tech stack based in Firebase.
I'm not quite sure what what sort of product they're talking about here. That could mean a variety of things.
Health tech.
I think you'll find that the Firebase suite is like pretty full featured. You can build just about anything in. The place where you may want to think harder about it is for regulatory reasons. And to be honest, I don't know what the regulatory environment is in the EU. I also don't know honestly the latest compliance things that Firebase has. So I would, before you start, try to figure out, hey, is Firebase actually going to be compliant with the regulations that I need? Am I going to be able to release this thing? But barring that, it's a pretty full featured thing these days. You can build just about anything on it.
So, Andrew, the next question, most likely you have already had it before. So I hope I'm not overstepping any boundaries by asking this. So obviously anonymous person has asked this, yeah? So, but let's try it on you. And if you don't want to answer it, please don't. How did it feel when millions poured into your bank accounts when you exited to Google?
It was nice. I'll tell you that. We were very poor for a long time, to the point of we funded it on credit card debt for a while. And like I said, we lived with our relatives. We lived with James's parents, and then we lived with my aunt. At one point, we had, when we finally had enough money to pay rent, we rented an office rather than an apartment. We kept living with my aunt, and then we went into the office. And so the transition from there to having a fair amount of money was pretty stark and pretty quick, right? These things, just a few years between those. So it was nice to have that level of security, and it was nice to be able to buy some things. The first thing I bought was some proper furniture for my house. And then I got my wisdom teeth removed, which is probably not the most fun purchase, but something you got to do. But yeah, it was nice.
Thank you, Andrew. So next, from one person, there are two questions. Let's separate them in two. What do you find interesting about Printify?
I mean, the numbers. It's you have a lot of happy customers, and you can the customers of their customers are a large number of folks, and it's growing really fast. I think that's a big piece of it. I think the other big piece is kind of what you said at the beginning of your talk, which is you guys are a Silicon Valley company in Latvia, and you operate the company that way, trying to bring some of the ethos of the way businesses are run here over there. And I don't know, to be honest, I don't know a ton about what most businesses are like in Latvia, so I couldn't tell you the difference, but I suspect it's a fairly stark contrast to the other folks over there. So I think that's a cool idea, and I do want to come visit. They keep telling me I should come visit, and I want to. Just haven't been able to make my way over there yet, but I'm excited to see it at some point.
Definitely summer. Don't come in winter.
Okay.
So, and the second part of...
I grew up in Minnesota, which is also a very cold place, and so I understand that completely.
Okay. So, Andrew, second part of the question. If you want... Okay. It looks like somebody is asking for the continuation of your blog. So what challenges of the industry, what challenges of the industry would you like to dig into yourself personally? Basically, it looks like what challenges of the industry would you like to dig into personally? Industry, I'm not sure whether this Printify industry or general.
I'm going to do general, because Printify, I couldn't give you a smart answer. I don't really know. I can give you a couple that if I was quitting my current startup and doing a new thing, I would do. One of them is around remote collaboration. So there's, I use video chat every day, but it still is harder to talk to people I want to talk to. There's more friction. People don't want to jump on quick video chat as easily as if they were in the office and I could just pat them on the shoulder. And so I think there's some opportunity here to like build a service that allows you to have a virtual office that allows for like easy sort of interactions with people bumping into each other in the hall and like seeing what other people are doing in the office in a way that allows you to have a bit more of an in-person experience but remote. So I think there's an opportunity there. And obviously COVID is making that especially painful for a lot of people. That's one area. Another area is on the more technical side. I think WebAssembly is a big opportunity here. I think there's some developer products that can be built. There's new technologies that can be built on top of it. The stuff that Fastly's doing is really interesting. They're pushing WebAssembly runtimes to the edge. So if I was doing a developer product, I would be doing something probably with WebAssembly. If I was doing a more of a enterprise or consumer product, with something to do with video chat.
Awesome. Next one. This is as well amazing, and I think I need advice as well from you. What's your personal recipe for staying sane, focused, and healthy during the crazy startup period?
Who says I'm sane or healthy? No, here's my advice. Get some cats. Cats are great. They give you like nice little interruptions in the middle of the day when they're hungry. And they're like, hey, come over here, do this other thing. And they're just like, they're very chill. So they're a reminder just to like, relax. It's going to be okay. Take a nap. I'm only partly kidding. Cats are great. What other advice do I have for you? Get exercise. This is something that I learned after, getting to Google, and I gained a lot of weight at Google. And the stress, I'm a stress eater. And my way of coping is I get a milkshake every day. I go out and get a milkshake because every time I was stressed. And your brain just doesn't work as well if you're not getting exercise. And so I took up swimming, which unfortunately I can't really do now because of COVID. So now I'm running, but like swimming, running, biking. So I'd say, yeah, get exercise, get a cat, get enough sleep.
His words. I'm ticking my boxes. So doing. Hopefully I'm very good as well. 5 years. Say it again.
Do you have a cat?
I have 2 cats.
Oh, good. Okay.
I'm running ultra marathons. I'm doing Ironman. I'm swimming. So what else did you say? Eat. Sleep. Okay, I sleep.
Great.
Recipe. So thank you for the audience. Thank you very much for reminding me one crucial question that I missed. What kind of engineering and product development books do you read now, and why? Name at least maybe 2 or 3 if you can.
On the engineering side, I don't really read a lot of engineering books. I think largely because all the interesting stuff is, by the time the books get written, you're already behind the curve. I read more product development books. So there's a couple that I can think of. One is called Customers Included. And the reason I like it is it's a very general way of solving any sort of product problem. And I think it's something that most people understand very poorly. I think there's a lot of people who, when they either don't bring the customer in the room at all, in which case they're not getting the input, or they bring the customer in the room in such a way where like they're disruptive to the process and no one wants to listen to them because they're distracting. And so there's an art to involving the customer in the process in such a way that they have the right amount of impact, but they don't distract you from the core principles that you have. And I think that the book does a really nice job of summarizing that. Trying to think of other good books off the top of my head. Give me like 2 seconds. Let me look at my Kindle here. Well, there's one called Competing Against Luck, which I'm just sort of at the beginning of right now. That talks about the jobs to be done framework and how that works. So that's I can't tell you how the whole book goes, but the beginning seems good. So that's one of my current projects.
Okay, let's move on to the next question then. Is there any advice or something you wish you would know when you were younger investing into startups? So when you were a young investor, what would you wish to know when you started all this?
Yeah. Well, obviously, which ones were going to work out? I kid. I think like some of the stuff I'm going to say seems really obvious. Like the importance of having the right team, the importance of the integrity of the team. One of the things I'm going to start doing, which I haven't been doing in the past, I'm start doing is I've seen a strong correlation between founders who keep their investors up to date and founders that do well. And I think the reason has nothing to do with whether the investors know what's going on. It has everything to do with the founders who keep the investors up to date are probably also keeping their employees up to date. They're probably also keeping their customers up to date, and they are people who are good at communicating important information. And so I'm going to start asking anyone investing in, like, show me your last 3 investor updates if they had any existing investors, and if not, show me the last 3 updates you sent out to your friends or whoever they were. Right? Let me see if you're a good communicator. Because the ones who I invest in, I get an update every month, almost always go somewhere. And the ones who I invest in, I hear nothing, usually don't. So that seems to be a pretty strong indicator. I would say, like, I don't know. It's really hard to give any very specific advice because it's hard to know at any given time how you're doing investment wise, right? Like I had a company that seemed to be just off to the moon a year ago. And this was going to be my best return, and then COVID hit, and they were a very real world physical business, and like they're going to survive, but it's been real tough. And I had another startup that was a healthcare company that was near death, and then COVID hit, and now they're off to the moon because they do stuff that actually turns out is very important for COVID. So it's very hard to predict some of this stuff. So I would say, make many investments. Like if you're going to angel invest, don't make 3 investments, because chances are you will lose all of that money, right? Make at least 10, because if they're all lottery tickets, and if you buy 3 lottery tickets and you lose them all, it's not so great. If you buy 10, there's a good chance you'll get something in there. So I would say don't start angel investing unless you are going to be able to make multiple angel investments and kind of spread that risk out a little bit. At least not for financial reasons. If you want to angel invest because your friend's doing something, it makes sense. Actually, that's a good piece of advice as well. So some of the best returns are from people that I know very well already, my friends, or other founders I work with, or something like that. So this is, I guess, a good piece of advice. If you have a friend and they're really smart and they're really hardworking, and they go off and found a startup, invest in their startup if you can. When someone cold emails me and they have to convince me that they're smart and they're hardworking, like it's really hard for me to know. I'm usually very hesitant. And so if you're their friend and they're hardworking, they're smart, and they have a good idea, you have a huge advantage over people like me. So that'd be another one. It's like every time my friend comes to me, if they're smart and hardworking, write them a check.
Awesome. And you? Very good answers. I mean, even I'm taking notes. When one day we will exit from the Printify, most likely I want to do similar stuff, and I take notes over here. Okay, one more question. So there was a very interesting question, actually. What car do you drive?
My wife has a Toyota Camry. I guess technically it's mine now, too, but I haven't owned a car. This is actually kind of a funny story. The last time I owned a car personally was in 2010, when it was a Geo Prism. It was a 1996 Geo Prism, and it was set on fire by some arsonists in my neighborhood. They poured gasoline on it, and they threw a match, and they set it on fire. The police never solved it. We don't really know why. We think it was some sort of gang violence or something. We're not sure. Anyways, they burned my car down. I haven't owned one since. So I either borrow my wife's car, or I take a Lyft or an Uber somewhere. I also live in the city, so it's very walkable, but I don't intend to own a car again. I think cars are a lot of work.
I agree. Next question. What do you think about future of immersive tech, like XR, VR?
There is there's a company called The Void. I don't know if they have anything like this in Europe. Have you ever heard of The Void?
Not me.
Okay. So probably the most fun technology experience I've had in the last 5 years was this company called The Void, and they are it's a physical retail location. You go there, and you put on a VR headset, and you put on a backpack with a vest, and the computer's hooked up to the back, and you have headphones on. So it's headphones, it's VR headset, it's a backpack, and a vest. And then they push you into a physical environment that has props and sets so that you can interact. So you basically can walk around this room in your VR world, but everything you see in VR is a real thing you can touch. So you'll see a doorway, and the door is real. You can open the door, and there'll be a chair. You can sit on the chair. The chair is real. And they include things like heat. So if there's a part where you're standing near some lava, and they have a heat lamp. The heat lamp is something so you can feel the heat. They use smell. So there was a place where they're cooking pancakes, and they were putting the pancake smell into the air. And through a combination of touch and sound and heat and smell and vibration, because the suit is haptic, and the suit and they use the cameras to figure out where your hands are and what you can do. Actually, if you're asking about technology, this was one of the coolest things I've ever seen. It was so fun. I went in there and I did it, and then I did it 3 more times that weekend because it was that good. So post-COVID, check this out. There's one called The Void, but I think there's other people that do this too. But it was so good that it actually tricked my brain to the point where I thought it was real. I would be in VR standing on the edge of a cliff, and I would feel afraid. I was I'm gonna fall off this cliff. So I think that but yeah, there's one thing I'm really, really excited about seeing evolve is this combination of VR with the physical world to create a Star Trek holodeck experience. I think it is more doable than people realize, and it's going to be really amazing.
Amazing. I'm actually when you start, I almost immersed into everything that you told me, and then I remember last November I was in Disneyland in States, and it was in Orleans. Yeah, and there was this. We really liked Avatar, and we went for the Avatar with the kids, and you have to sit on some kind of dragon, and there's and fly with it, and all the smells and water, and it's unbelievable. And obviously with glasses on, with everything. So it was
there
amazing.
is at Disneyland in the Disney city, there is The Void. You can do it there. That's the first place I did it. So next time you're there, send your kids on the ride, and you go to The Void.
We'll do that. Awesome. So I think we have time for, let's say, maybe 1 or 2 more questions. What's your favorite product, and how would you redesign it?
Ooh, favorite product.
Most likely. Yeah.
Oh man, I love these things. My AirPods.
AirPods. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Oh, they're so good. How would I redesign it? I don't know that I do anything. They're that good. Let me think of something I would redesign. Yeah, there's a lot of Apple products on the list for sure. A lot of headphones. Well, obviously I have a startup that's redesigning something, but I don't want to say what it is. So.
No worries. Let's not stress you.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to pass on this one.
Okay. So only one.
These are great.
Yeah. Okay, you answered 50%. Oh, awesome. Okay, we found it. Andrew, there is several questions that one person is definitely very much interested in metrics and KPIs and asking several different questions. I'll try to combine them in one. Basically, if you would need to think about pre-launch and post-launch Firebase, or pre-startup investing into the startup and not investing in startup, is there any unifying or very awesome KPIs or metrics that you are looking for? Because it's difficult to quantify a smart and energized entrepreneur, right, to invest into, but any practical things?
I think the most important thing is that they have KPIs, that they are measuring the KPIs, and that the KPIs are clearly defined. There's a lot of startups that will, they'll give you a deck with like some KPI that's like sort of some imaginary glamour metric that you're like, I don't know what this number is, right? A lot of times they'll be like, number of phone calls with customers, and you're like, okay, well, what does that mean? Did they buy it? Who are these customers, right? So you want to pick metrics that are very easy to understand and very easy to measure. This is why things like revenue are really good metrics, right? It's like everyone knows what they mean, and like they're very easy to measure to see what's coming into your bank account. Or monthly active users is another one that is like a little bit trickier to define. Like, what does active mean? But for most products, it's still a relatively easy thing to define. So pick what those KPIs are. Make sure you are reliably measuring them. Like in my own experience, every time I think that the dashboard is right, the dashboard is wrong. Right? It's actually really hard to get those measurements to be reliable, especially when the product is evolving, right? So if you're defining activity this way, and then somebody deploys new version in the back end that like changes something, suddenly maybe that activity metric isn't accurate anymore for whatever reason. So make sure those are accurate. And then as an investor, what do I care about? I would say like they should have these things, they should be clearly defined, and they should be reliably focusing on them from the very beginning. So we had like my very first all hands on the day one of this company, like literally the first day, I put up a slide that was like monthly active users 0, revenue 0, right? And like every update since then has been focused on that. And I still today we still have no revenue, we're pre-revenue. Every update I send out, revenue 0, revenue 0, revenue 0. But I want to make sure everyone understands the goal here is to make money, right? So let's stay aligned on that. And like when that number goes from 0 to 1, that's going to be great. And hopefully more than that at some point. As far as like what really matters as metrics, it depends on the company. I think I don't have a clear formula for you. For someone like Printify, like GMV is probably pretty important. For someone who's more like a SaaS, like enterprise product, right? You probably care about like paid seats. For someone who's more of a developer product, right? What you care about is like active apps. But it really depends on the type of thing you're doing.
Awesome. Andrew, we're out of time. If you need to run, you run. If not, a last question from me.
Sure, one more, sounds good.
So, Andrew, I mean, is there a chance, I'm asking as well in the interviews for the guys when I'm trying to see what they would come up with. I'm asking this question like, please teach me something. And it's so weird things I have ever heard. So I don't know, can you come up with something?
Yes, I can. Does it have to be about technology, or can it just be a random fact? Okay, I'm going to teach you the weirdest thing. Did you know that broccoli, cabbage, bok choy, kohlrabi, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, and like 3 other things, they're actually all the same species of plant.
They look completely different.
They're the same plant.
Oh my God. And then how do they differ? Same species.
They've just been selectively bred over a long period of time. It's like dogs. But it's the same species.
Unbelievable. Thank you very much, Andrew. So I need to thank you for advices for myself, for the time you dedicated for our engineering society here in the Baltics, and hopefully mostly here in Riga. I thank you, audience, for all the great questions, and I hope It was very insightful and very inspiring. At least for me, it was. Thank you, Andrew.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah, see you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.